Thank you, Scott-san, and good morning, good afternoon. My presentation will be brief because what I'm going to share is what support actually the bank is providing for the country. With the aspects that all speakers talked about so far about the how to identify the authorization requirements, how to establish the policy framework and associated infrastructure requires in order for them to track and then register the information that is maybe needed to submit to the UNFCCC. Next slide, please. So of course, in countries that where we are working right now, and of course again the needs for the countries vary depending on also the support those countries are receiving from different developing partners and other agencies. But of course, our support to the countries starts from also on how actually the countries need to develop the asset development process. That you have seen actually in examples that were mentioned by Ghana and also in Jordan, where for the process requirements follows almost like similar to what we have witnessed in the past and the Kyoto Protocol, but of course now with the need for having decisions related to the authorization process and then at what stage actually the countries wanted to do the authorization and by what means, like some countries might actually decide that to have some kind of a positive list or define a red list and then giving a signal to the market participants that as long as the process follows the project falls into one of those categories, depending on if it's a positive list, so then there is some kind of assurance that that project might actually get the needed approvals and authorizations, of course following the other requirements that needs to be met. Of course, we with the support of other independent standards, the gold standard Vera, through the informal working group that we established, so we kind of established some kind of a common carbon asset development process. It doesn't mean that one, of course, this need to be followed strictly in the sense, but of course, this gives an idea about how countries can think through the different processes and the requirements to be defined very clearly, either in their policy framework defines or through a separate process. Of course, this process also considers about the role of other systems like registries and the data management systems like MRV that Jordan has, and of course like how these systems could be connected to outside systems like World Bank supported climate action data trust, etc. So this is of course one type of the support that the bank provides to countries to think through the entire process that the countries need to follow. Next slide. This, of course, you have seen already slide from Engineer Bilal. So this is, of course, one of the very comprehensive support that bank provides in terms of helping countries to think through different elements of the policy framework that they set up. I mean, it's like you have seen, of course, the Ghana very comprehensive actually the policy framework, covering almost all the aspects that we could think of. And of course, we are helping also with Jordan developing this policy framework, mostly covering the different topics that are listed here. But again, this will be customized depending on how the stakeholder feedback that we receive within the country, and of course also to align the requirements with the whatever actually the RMPs actually suggest on this one. This is a very, of course, comprehensive process, and we have developed some kind of approach papers on this one, how countries need to follow and then process these things, and for the support that we could provide. Next slide. So these are, of course, the other issues that I think I don't need to repeat, because these are some of the things that already we heard from the presentations, that how they looked into the different when it comes to the authorization process, like how of identifying the requirement, corresponding adjustment requirements, and then of course the whether country needs to issue both approval and authorization letters, or they can directly go into the authorization letter straight away, and eliminating another bureaucratic process in between. And then how basically under the authorization, the corresponding adjustment is required, then how they need to record that one, and then apply, and then of course also to and submit that particular information to UNFCCC and through the BTRs and etc. So we will of course help the countries to think through all these processes, and then help them to make informed decisions, and then develop systems, processes, and then of course policy frameworks accordingly. Next slide. So this big again, I think Sana, I think, listed some of these questions again. I mean, it's like, yeah, the important questions that that again, based on our experience so far, I think the mainly issues related to the timing issue. At what point in time, of course, the this authorization need to be provided, and then whether the government should consider establishing such kind of processes for different market requirements, covering some other aspects related to, for example, voluntary markets and etc. And of course, like we have seen also some of the countries basically in their authorization letter setting up some kind of vintage limits, and then the thresholds on the volume, and then time period, etc. So how basically countries need to look into those aspects. And then of course accordingly, so then that defines basically what should be the contents of the authorization letter should require, because this has implications on the level of the government role and the resources that they need to track, I mean, so that's a very critical aspect that countries need to decide on, like what information that they need in order for them to make the decision on authorization. And of course, some of the questions, like there is a question of the authorization, and what happens to in such scenarios, and then what implications does it have, and etc. So these are the range of questions. Of course, obviously, we will help countries to think through, and then potentially identify some practical solutions that supports the market development, but not at the cost of meeting their NDC. And obviously the stakeholder consultation process is very critical in the entire process. I think next is my final slide, I guess. So yeah, so all the support that I mentioned to the countries on different aspects I mentioned will be mostly delivered through the Partnership for Market Implementation facility, under which of course we have different work programs and initiatives. And of course, we have under the PMI program, Partnership for Market Implementation, right now 17 countries. Of course, though the primary focus of those 17 countries is to ready and then implement the domestic carbon pricing instruments. But of course, the major component of that program also includes support towards international carbon markets. I think I will end my presentation here, and then happy to answer any questions that you may have. So here is the slide, of course, with resources that you could access on different, especially of course the approach papers that I mentioned, and also related topics in the books. Thanks.
Oh, thank you very much, Hari-san. And yeah, after I think all the presentations finished, yeah, we will have a Q&A session. So thank you very much again, Hari-san. So second presenter is Jimena Aristizabal, Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI. So Jimena-san, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kentaro. And you're gonna share the slides, right? Yeah. Also, thank you very much for inviting the Global Green Growth Institute to present today in this first meeting of the Authorization Working Group. I want also to thank Daniel, David, Bilal, Simon, and Harry. It's really encouraging to learn firsthand about the detailed processes your countries have defined. Let's move to the next slide, please. Yeah, getting into the matter, it is my mission today to share some of the work we do together with our member countries to support decision-making related to authorization. So the way in which we work is that we enable moderated dialogue and facilitate access to technical information and international experiences for national stakeholders to have plenty of elements to guide government-led internal decision-making processes. As authorization is part of a broader landscape of strategic decisions for a country, we encourage addressing it by answering the following questions: what to authorize, how to authorize it, and most importantly, why. And as I said, that why is the most important, I'll start by that one. So under the why question, country governments identify which mitigation activities will contribute the most to different commitments and plans they already have, such as their own NDC, but also long-term development strategies, or even ambitious goals like net zero or phasing out coal programs. Part of this process includes narrowing down sectors, types of activities, technologies, and prioritizing those that will bring substantial long-term benefits to the country. Moving forward to the what, here we support discussions about attributes that can be listed and checked when countries receive mitigation activity proposals. In other words, this is the definition of eligibility criteria. And maybe a little bit opposite from what we have seen today in Switzerland and other countries. We are promoting countries to keep the list short and simple, at least at the beginning, and specifying it further after testing the criteria with real examples and experience on the ground. Finally, regarding the how, this is support to laying out all the decisions and procedures for all interested parties to know how and when to proceed. This is about streamlining processes, using the standardized formats, and having publicly available rules, as all of you have and have shown us. This will reduce the risks for the country, including double counting and overselling, and will conduct potential developers, donors, and investors to propose projects in priority areas for the government, while at the same time complying with Article 6 guidelines. Let's move to the next slide, please. The support that we give to every country is very different. So the approach to working with them is 100% tailor-made. We have embedded teams in each member country. So our staff, DGI staff, can discuss directly with the government about their specific requirements, what their needs are, and try to build as much as possible over the work the same government and other organizations are doing. So I have a couple of examples here from our programs. So for example, Cambodia is a country under the MAX program funded by Sweden, by Sia here present tonight. In this country, the government drafted the regulatory framework for carbon markets, and we, as GGGI, facilitated technical discussions over the inclusion of Article 6 requirements as part of the eligibility criteria. Here in the slide, you see some examples on the sessions that we carry over. So we try to make it very, very simple, very graphic, and then try to encourage a lot of participation and interaction during this discussion sessions. Another country where we are supporting government-led discussions is Senegal. And here we have been focusing about the why. So the government has been making or having some sessions to strategize and point out where carbon finance is mostly required. So they have established some areas in which the country can focus cooperative approaches to achieve their conditional targets. This work is part of the DAPA program supported by Norway. Let's move to the next slide just to see a couple of pictures of these sessions with the countries. And well, I have to say that both countries are very well structured and have high local expertise. Here we talk to them and wait for their indications on where our support is more valuable in synergy with the work that other organizations are supporting as well. Finally, I wanted to highlight the work under the SPARK program funded by the International Climate Initiative from Germany. This program is managed by GGI in consortium with UNEP CCC, Carbon Limits, GFA, and KPZ. This program is preparing a toolbox with different guidelines, including some for the design of Article 6 strategies and governance structures. The idea of these documents is to showcase options and practical examples with indication of action points for different practitioners. Maybe we can move to the next slide. We also see the authorization process and frameworks in a continuous evolution. So that's also part of starting by something simple that's of course in compliance with the rules. But NDCs will be evolving, and also long-term plans, and yeah, with more experience, countries can be more refined in the future. I just want, yeah, I think this is my final slide. I have another one that shows the work that we are doing in the different programs and the different countries that we are supporting. Next slide, please. And this will be just the final slide. And I think it is fair to say that we are witnessing the benefits of sustained capacity building and access to information. I can see that now in 2023, after years of capacity building, outreach, and with the leadership of many countries and organizations like the ones that we have here, Switzerland, Ghana, Sweden, Jordan, we have been learning a lot, and we can get hold of more and more accumulated knowledge, lessons learned, examples that others might be able to adapt and replicate. And we have also identified some areas that still require collective creativity to come up together with totally different solutions. Thank you again to the Ministry of Environment of Japan for leading this working group. We remain keen to the cooperation with other donor countries, with the World Bank, UNDP, IGES, and other organizations, and to keep building this collective knowledge bank and to accelerate international carbon markets for the sake of reducing GHG emissions and securing green growth in a functional environment for future generations. Thank you very much.